Okay. We are now, we're at 11:30. We had a little bit longer session with our 9 o'clock review of Memorial Stadium. The Memorial Stadium deliberation and action will occur at our October 17th meeting in the morning. We'll pick up from where we left off then. So moving on to our final item for the day, this is an opportunity for the commission to review and approve two documents. One are the September 19th, 2024 meeting minutes that primarily are developed we have meeting minutes for all of our meetings, but it was also an opportunity to both memorialize the vote as well as some of the comments and reasoning are also memorialized in the minutes for each of the from each of the commissioners' comments and discussions on that day. The second document that you will be reviewing and hopefully approving today is a document that we have, which is the draft report, which is dated October 1st. I want to take an opportunity to go through that before and give you some highlights before any discussion and potential approval of the report today. So starting, I'm going to just frame these in groups based upon different pages. The first 3 pages really are an opportunity for, and really are focused in on a discussion of the overall KIOSK program. One, the scope of the program that you looked at, again, just reiterating that this was for a programmatic term permit and not a site-specific term permit. That the review and recommendations are really limited to the presentations that you received as well as test locations. Review, and that document that there was a review of sample locations to assess the implications of the project on the right of way. And finally, acknowledging the technology and design of the kiosk as well as the expertise of the project. Moving on to page 3 of the draft report. That's really where we provide the overall discussions about the SDC's, the Design Commission's concerns about the proposal and the range of opinions of the commission, which were not only underscored in your vote, but repeated in some way. And both acknowledging the range of public comment for and against the proposal. And then finally, documenting the overall concern that the commission had about the value proposition of allowing offsite digital advertising in the right of way, and a listing of all the main features that were disclosed to us about the program, the 1.1 million to DSA and initial deployment, dollars potentially to the city later, although there's a question about whether or not they should be occurring in the initial deployment. Highlighting discussion that you had about the kiosk benefit to the public, including that analogy about smartphones. And really the overall questions that you pose about how to maximize not only the revenue stream to the DSA, but really maximizing how the public actually benefits from this. If we're asked to, and if the city council ultimately decides to approve this proposal, making sure that there's not only a close and measurable and transparent relationship between these kiosks and the public realm enhancement, but that there's a limitation about any other actors coming onto the scene that might want to install additional. In the actual recommendation section on pages 4 and 5, there were 5 recommendations that we ultimately that are ultimately reflected here that were reflected in previous draft. I thought that there was initial condition limiting the program to no more than 80. I think that's probably redundant based upon the application materials and the presentation. So I think that it's probably wise to strike that. Really looking at 5 distinct recommendations requiring public engagement to people in the project area following the SDOT SEPA determination and SDOT's report to the council. Having another expanded public engagement round before the city council actually starts meeting on the proposal. Recommending that there's a limitation on the initial deployment of 30. And it became clear that was also another edit about the initial deployment was 30, and that would be the appropriate time for a report back to the city council. But really recommending that the deployment was limited to tourist and visitor areas based upon what I think you all have determined based upon their presentations about who this is actually being tailored to, primarily the visitor and tourist base that will be coming to the city, partly through FIFA, but partly just because of the nature of Seattle is a significant tourist draw, independent of FIFA or other events that may or may not be coming associated with that. And then again, requiring a council public hearing that's separate from any meetings that they have to make sure that there's ample time for public engagement on this. So they have more of an opportunity, more opportunities to hear from the public who are in the program areas that would be affected by that. Pages 5 through 9 have a series of site-specific discussions and recommendations based upon the code criteria that you use in evaluating the proposal. View blockage and impacts to reduction of natural light, interruption or interference of existing streetscape, effect on commerce and enjoyment of neighboring land uses, effect on traffic and pedestrian safety, accessibility to the elderly and handicapped. We didn't have much overview of that during the reviews. I think that there was a high level of confidence that the team has been working on ADA issues, not only with their placement, but how they're used, not only with their previous work. We did include a recommendation that they go to the city's disabilities commission to get their input, in particular, not only about installation, but how they can be used by populations with visual, physical, or sensory limitations, and where they can be enhanced to work with those communities. And then finally, from pages 9 through the remaining portion of the document, I would just point out that I think the bulk of your recommendations really begin on page 13 about, and I want to just call out Kate for a second. Kate, thank you so much for your additions to the public art program. I think it's very, very helpful, and I think it really captured the spirit of what we heard about the program and the discussion about how to add value to that. So thank you. I think the biggest addition to this program that you've seen that we didn't really have a presentation on, but I think it's an excellent way to elevate the public benefit package, is really looking at, consistent with what we see for other term permits, for sky bridges, and for street allocations. Really site-specific additions to the public realm where there are known public realm deficiencies on the same block. Yeah. That we would ask the council to adopt a condition where there are those known deficiencies, where there's a curb line that has significant damage, where one is simply doesn't exist, where there's a sick or damaged tree, where there's a lack of street furniture that meets ADA requirements. That the kiosk, the SDOT and the kiosk team come up with a solution to offset the implications of the kiosk by adding value by upgrading the other amenities or lack of amenities in the right of way. That's a very high level overview of the report.
Can you point me towards where the SEPA outline is? That's what I was looking for this morning. I couldn't find it. The outline of the proposed SEPA.
I didn't go into the report about the specific outlines of the SEPA determination. Rather, we did in our last presentation get an overview about the components of SEPA. One, the aesthetic study and the status of that review. Two, the transportation memo and the status of that
Oh,
review.
I read it in the minutes. Okay, sorry.
The thinking and determination so far about whether or not this meets the sign code and what thinking is about how this program could be allowed based upon what we know about this restrictions of sign code.
Right, because I missed the meeting after trying to catch up, and so that was in the minutes, not, okay, thank you, Michael.
After we sent that draft, there were, and I'd included with you as well, an amendment by a relatively, and this report, and I want to thank all of the commissioners who provided input on the report. There were a number of mostly technical or minor amendments. I did include in the final version that you have in the strikeout underline version as well, the bulk of the substantive amendments. Molly had two minor amendments that I think help the project out, and I believe Adam has an amendment as well. Why don't we do this just for the sake of formality? Can I get a motion to approve the draft report?
Motion to approve.
Is there a second? Discussion. Molly, why don't we start with you and your proposed amendment?
Okay, so you all have mine printed in yellow. You'll see most of the changes are simple, 1 to 2 word changes just for clarity. But the only one that's a little bit more substantive is if you look at 6C, it's an assessment of how increased public engagement with residents and immediately adjacent businesses. So adding immediately adjacent businesses has informed and shaped the public's interest or perceived value of kiosks. So basically after that 30, rather than it just being an engagement of residents, making sure that those immediately adjacent businesses that we're including their comments about whether these kiosks are improving their business, worsening their business, increasing competition to their business, blocking their cafe zones, just really how is it impacting the immediate businesses in addition to Seattle residents.
Was there any discussion? Thank you. Is there any discussion about those amendments? That's all I'm highlighting, and then we'll go on to Ad. Good Ad. Thank you.
I have
Well, let me just, Phoebe, did you have any? Your face is the largest on the screen right now, so I turned and I saw you.
You're big.
Oh, Phoebe. Make sure
You look great, Phoebe.
Great.
You're not even on the corner anymore.
I had just a really minor, super minor amendment. So on page 2, last paragraph, second sentence, I was proposing striking the second sentence to last paragraph.
Put the bottom, page 2.
Can you read it?
Which sentence?
The kiosks are designed to maximize the user experience, and then it goes on.
Where are we?
What
Page
depends,
2,
So page 2,
final paragraph, second.
but it depends on which version you have to know.
Oh, yeah.
The report.
Of the report.
of the report.
Right.
The last paragraph here starts with much of the SDC concerns.
I'm looking at the draft report on letterhead.
Okay, that's what I'm saying, letterhead change.
Got it.
For the record,
You think we're not prepared, we might be old.
and so the paragraph at the bottom of page 2 starts with the sentence, "IKE has developed
Yes.
electronic kiosks that have the capabilities in communicating and displaying." And so I think your amendment would be starting at that second sentence.
That's right. Just striking the second sentence. I think 1 and 3 actually provide the context without as much narrative around the context.
I agree with that. Michael, I have something that.
A separate amendment? Okay. I just want to make sure that we have a discussion about this. I'm going to reach out to Phoebe. Phoebe, did you track that and did you have any comments about the edit that's proposed by Adam?
Yeah, I'm tracking. I don't have any additional comments. I had one comment I thought of that's on the side, not related to Adam, so for next.
And
I think
I'm
it's a good-
open to striking or just adding to the beginning of that sentence, the applicant indicates that. And indicate
Yeah,
that
I
as
don't
a
think our
perspective that's been
place is-
shared or strike.
To say what it was designed, you know, how successful it was being designed. Right?
I think
Well,
I'm
there's
open
some
either way.
aspects of What they're designed to do, I think the user experience is a secondary function of them, and so that's why I think that.
But, you know, then the rest of the sentences have that same advocacy point of view that I think you might be objecting to. So I think Molly's suggestion might be the way to make it clear that this is what we heard from the applicant. I think that kind of actually makes sense.
And if you did that, it would come in after between the word that and have. So Ike has developed electronic kiosks that the applicant indicates have capabilities.
So you say
so
it right at the
on and so forth.
beginning, and then that conditions that whole paragraph and all that information. Because Adam, as I read on, I think that we kind of almost have the same issue.
Sure. Yeah, I think that's right, John.
So then the phrase would be between that and have the applicant indicated.
So instead of deleting what Adam.
Yeah.
That's kind of where we are.
Does adding that address your concern, Adam?
I think so. Yeah. That's fair.
Is there any other discussion on that amendment? Good.
Yeah, I was just thinking on the page 3, where we talk about the commissioners having a diversity of opinions about the proposal. You know, I think, I guess it's the second to last sentence, other commissioners perceive that the program may provide upgrades to the public realm, but a potentially high price. And I guess if I am that side of the perception, I don't think it's a high price. I think it's I guess I feel like it's kind of more of a non-issue. So I would say that a minimal impact to how people currently enjoy it, with a minimal impact to how people currently enjoy the right of way.
So
And I would say as part of the other side, I think we also acknowledge that there are benefits, right? And so I think the comment is,
Well,
the comment should just not be that it's a high price, but all of us understand that there is a cost benefit evaluation going on, right? And I don't think the sentence is about some of us. I think all of us acknowledge that there's cost benefits. We just land on different sides of whether it's worth or not.
So I got two things here. First, I had mentioned to Michael that I thought we should perhaps strike the sentence, some commissioners do not support the proposal
Yeah.
under any circumstances. Because when I looked at how people voted, that didn't seem to be true. It seemed that people conditioned things.
Not everyone though, I didn't condition.
So is that, so if that sentence is still true for some
I didn't
commissioners, it should stay.
condition.
But that's what I wanted to check.
There were a few condition no's, but not all.
Okay, but so some commissioners do not support the proposal under any circumstances. I think it's a valid sentence.
I do.
Okay, great. I mean, I do too. I just wasn't there to vote, so I don't want to impose that.
Sure.
Okay. Then the word that came to me about what Ben is talking about is proportion. Because I think what we're really, and I think we're in different places about what proportional means to us, but I think we all want the benefit to be proportional to the impact. So Michael, I think if you could work that into that then leaves room for everyone to possibly be in agreement about that.
And I guess I'm saying that, and so it feels like the balance, it doesn't feel like, but in the way that that's stated, that my perspective is necessarily reflected in the high price, because I don't feel like it is a high price.
I think we can just say commissioners perceive that the program may provide upgrades to the public realm, but at a price.
That would be okay.
at a price that we all, that everyone feels should be
I think
proportional
maybe it's the high price.
to the impact.
Yeah,
Yeah,
it's something
well, yeah,
about
I
how
mean,
the price of the impact should be proportional to the
Right,
public.
the impact has to be offset by proportional. We all draw that line in a different place, but we all
Correct.
agree.
That's the part that we're all landing on a different part of that spectrum.
Mhm.
Right,
Right,
Not
yeah.
that that spectrum doesn't exist, right?
right.
Well, yeah,
So I think it applies to all of us.
I think, Ben, you're right, though. There's, none of these sentences really capture the pro view, right?
Right.
Like there are three sentences.
Right.
One is, don't support it under any circumstances. One is, we don't feel the cost is worth it, you know. The third one should be something like, the program provides upgrades to the public realm and. you know,
Maybe just period.
Yeah,
I mean, I feel like it's
and
it's
the
a,
cost benefit analysis is favorable or whatever.
yeah, it's a minimal impact to the, how people
Yeah.
enjoy the public right of way. I mean, I also am totally in agreement with what Jill's saying. I think
Yeah.
it should be proportional, and I think that's everyone's goal,
Yep.
if they get installed.
And you agree that it is.
Yeah.
Early on, I added the range thing because I realized that I was trying to grapple with the apples for steps, is that we just had to state it's a range, you know? And we can't demonstrate every single range, but we can just say it's a range.
Yeah.
So I think what they're saying, and I can be sympathetic to it, is that these don't define the full range.
Right.
Could I suggest an edit for that sentence and see if it gets us to what you are each saying?
Well,
Yeah.
I just think, I think the previous sentence though is actually about your perspective, Ben. I think you're inserting yourself on the kind of no side, and having that reflect your perspective. I believe that some commissioners are more tolerant of digital advertising as reflective of your perspective.
Oh, yeah, that's kind of true. I guess they're
Then,
slightly, we sort of did both extremes and.
We did left,
I
right, and
guess-
then middle.
Right.
so then if,
So maybe that is fair, because that does, to your point, Adam, I guess that when I read it in that context, it does feel like more and more tolerant of digital advertising, believe the current public benefit is proposed. Well,
Yeah, the
no,
second
I
part.
wouldn't say that's right,
Yeah.
because that's the one that says, do not meet the level needed to offset the intrusion. That's right. So they don't, so that's like, that is the middle of some people, I think,
Okay, how about the current benefits must meet the level? Must meet a level to offset the intrusion.
That makes sense.
Didn't Molly have an edit that she was about to propose?
Yeah, I had an option, but
Yeah, I see.
let me do it with all two of those sentences, which I think are maybe three sentences. So some commissioners are more tolerant of digital advertising, period. Commissioners believe the current public benefits proposed must meet the level needed to offset the intrusion. I would say instead of other, some commissioners perceive that the program may provide upgrades to the public realm, which must be balanced with the impacts related to how people currently enjoy the right of way.
I think that's all of us though.
That's the point, is that they're going to be able to find themselves in that area.
But then you.
So we could just say commissioners perceive, if that's true, commissioners perceive that the program may provide upgrades to the public realm. Because I think we still have some who didn't feel that it provided upgrades to the public realm. Is that?
Well,
So that's why I left to the
the
some.
stewards and the benefits that are going to be created with the money are
Mhm.
the upgrades.
So Molly,
Adam, Adam, would you agree with that? Because I don't want to represent all commissioners in that sentence. So we can say some commissioners or commissioners for,
what if, Molly, read the sentence again, putting may or may not in there.
the first, all three.
Nope, just the third.
The third one,
Forget other, start with commission.
commissioners perceive that the program may or may not
Just try.
provide upgrades to the public realm, which must be balanced with the impacts related to how people currently enjoy the right of way.
Like, in any case, the impacts must be balanced. There's, 'cause that's a
And
I
so
think
instead
there's
of
common
which,
ground.
I mean, I think the way that I guess, we should, I don't think that I object to that. I think the way that it is written reflects the breadth of opinions that we've talked about on and I think it goes all the way from maybe, Adam being not under any circumstances, but he supported it, and probably me being on the, Phoebe or me being on the other side where we think it's okay. And I think the way it's written reflects that. I just think, but I don't necessarily think it's a high price related to how people currently enjoy. I just think there's, anytime you put anything in the right of way, there's going to be some sort of impact, but I feel like it's a minimal or negligible compared to what it provides. But
Yes,
if you just took high, if you took,
Yeah.
you still got high or with,
So we've taken out high in that last, I'm just gonna go through it now. I think Jill's may or may not makes a lot of sense. I'm just gonna go through those 3 sentences and tell me if it works or if it doesn't work. Okay, so some commissioners are more tolerant of digital advertising. Period. Commissioners believe the current public benefits proposed must meet the level needed to offset the intrusion. Commissioners perceive that the program may or may not provide upgrades to the public realm and must be balanced with the impacts related to how people currently enjoy the right of way.
I don't object to that. That's good.
The second part, though, I think would still need a modifier, because by saying and must then negates the first part of the sentence where it's acknowledging that there's folks that are not supporting it. Does that make sense? It'd be better if we could edit in real time. But
So she changed the but to an and, which I thought was better. Do you think it should be but?
and at a potentially,
It doesn't have high price anymore and must be balanced with the impacts related to how people currently enjoy the right of way.
I think that's what we're saying. Brian was saying earlier too, so. I like that.
I think you now have 2 sentences that are
Let's say the
Some
same thing.
cost benefit.
Mhm.
Right? So you say very simply, program needs to meet the level in order to offset, right?
I think keeping the other makes sense in the beginning of the sentence as compared to saying commissioner, like trying to wrap everything into a blanket statement.
And it's not false. Well, I'm not sure other or some.
Yeah, some.
I don't think we have to wordsmith that much.
I appreciate that.
But you don't want a blanket statement of all commissioners.
Correct. Correct.
I know we're worrying about button and.
Can I throw out one more thought?
Yeah.
Okay, so some commissioners do not support the proposal under any circumstances.
Yes.
Then just take away the next 2 sentences and say something like, other commissioners will, support or do not support the proposal based on their opinion of, the relative benefits and impacts, their judgment of whether the impacts outweigh the benefits or don't outweigh the benefits. So just 2 sentences. Some don't support under any circumstances, and then some, however you want to say that, and then the rest of the commissioners just fall in a different place on that spectrum of how they outweigh how they weigh the benefits and costs.
Not a bad idea.
And I think that then that kind of captures everyone's. So everyone can find themselves in one of those
I
2
know.
sentences.
I have an
But
impression. when you
but
say
if we
range
just,
between
but I
three.
guess I'm the only one maybe that objects to the way it's currently worded.
Mhm.
And if you said with a minimal price related to how people currently enjoy the right of way, or with a low price or something like that,
Mhm.
we just be, it could just be done
A price.
Okay.
with a price, but with a potential price related to how people. I even be okay with that. With the potential price. I just think the high price isn't the way that I.
No, and that was clear, and I think that's the motivating factor for the discussion. I can't write as fast as you guys are talking, and I'm glad this is going. So what I would like to do is to get your approval that, to make sure that the tone is right, that I, after today's meeting, just get that sentence, make sure that all of you see it. Because I don't want to lose sight of the larger part of the letter, which is really you making a series of recommendations. And I believe that those recommendations are really about, you raise a lot of questions about this proposal. The project has a lot of questions that are raised by this. And what I believe is that those recommendations go a long way in shoring up or answering or supporting the program to make it, if this is something that the council decides to do, to really elevate how much the public really understands about what these are going to do and what they will be. But more importantly, knit in an opportunity in a very specific way for when one is under review, that the public has an opportunity to understand that, the public has an opportunity to get notice. It is something that we've been talking with SDOT about, and we'll continue to talk to SDOT about in their memorandum of understanding with DSA and KIOSK, and more importantly, what other tools they may develop, including a rule that they will use to clarify about what I think your goal is that when one is proposed for a block, that there's significant public engagement at that point.
Okay. It's high noon
I know,
and,
that's how I was trying to.
and you're absolutely right. We should give you discretion to either reduce the number of sentences, tweak the words, but I think you've heard
Yes.
what people want to
Yeah,
express.
I think so.
They
And
don't
I
want to
think,
back off on, there's some that's not acceptable at all, and then they want some fairness
Yeah.
in how many sentences or modifiers balance the rest of the range.
and I appreciate the sentiment and the point, Ben. I think you're right. There are clear distinctions, and I want to make sure that we captured those voices clearly.
It's been there for a while too. It's not like brand new. I just feel like this is my last chance to say something. I should say it.
I have one question. It may not be a quick question. I don't know if we can get to it, but I'm just wondering if someone could point me to an area in this document, that, do we touch on the relationship between sign code versus term permit relationship? What are recommendations around that? Because there are points when we actually refer to how this adheres to the sign code. There's points when we talk about if other entities seek a term permit, which is maybe kind of indicating a paving of that direction as compared to responding to other codes. So I'm just wondering if we're including that type of language in these recommendations, what is our stance on that?
You do not in this report touch on that issue for a variety of reasons. One, I think that whether or not they're permitted by code and whether or not this is a way to address what I believe in the sign code is clear prohibition. I'm reticent to do too much of that for a variety of reasons. Number one, we're not experts on the field. I have some command of the issue, but really that's an issue with SDCI and SDOT. And frankly, I think this will be an issue that will be litigated at some point. So I'm leery about going down that too far, whether or not that's an issue that goes for the hearing examiner or there's judicial relief by someone.
Maybe, Michael, and I appreciate hearing that. I'd be curious, since we're on that topic specifically, to hear from other commissioners, since this is a document being published, representing the commissioners, how people feel about the inclusion or exclusion of that explicit language in addressing that question.
And I've been struggling with it, and that's why I liked it when I found in the minutes the outline for the sequence. What the question had brought up to me, and Michael, I think you allude to all through this thing, when you talk about the public process here and public process here and public process here, is the word that came to me was sequence. And should we be advocating for a different sequence going forward? Should we be advocating that this kind of stuff doesn't come to us And for us to have to juggle the sign code in that, and for us to say, where's the public process that ESPA should be doing? And I don't know if the answer is no, in the sequence of things, this is the right time for us to be considering it. But if it is, it leaves all these things open that we're wrestling with, but we can't, or we're not, we can't do anything. That's my one open question from all of it. We're advocating for all of these things. Next time, there should be this kind of process.
Yes.
Next time, next time, next time. So should we come and say this is out of sequence and difficult for us? Because it's out of sequence?
I mean, I kind of agree with Michael personally, like, I think there was an application made. Our role is to evaluate that application under the current criteria of what that permit is. I think we all fell in a different place. But, I think we get way too far into the policy realm.
But I do think it's fair if you say something along the lines of, we do have concerns that this proposal,
Does not.
either through design or intent, or whatever that might be, is not consistent with the sign code, and we don't understand that. And we think that there needs to be some discussion moving forward about the wisdom of this.
And Zubin, I totally get what you're saying, but I also hear Kate saying.
Yeah.
Are we paving the way for more things to come this way? And it's really not, obviously, what we think should happen.
Well, I guess I'm saying that, and I'm saying we're discussing the sign code. We're discussing the potential future applicants for term permits. So we're acknowledging the reality of these conditions. And so it makes sense to be a little more direct in that process. I know it was something that Kevin brought up a lot too in discussion. So to me, that's one thing that was part of the reason why I wanted to make sure we had space for discussion, because it's less about wordsmithing and more about messaging.
Yes. If you're willing to allow me to work with a couple of you about making sure there is a paragraph that states, and again, I'm just doing this at 30,000 feet, the overarching concern about allowing this to circumvent the prohibition on the sign code. Whether or not it's legal, those
Or just
brighter minds will be there, but.
the apparent contradiction. That we can't resolve.
If you're fine with me developing a paragraph on that to insert in the section of pages 1 to 3, where you're talking about your concern about the overall program, I'm happy to do that with your direction, and yes.
Sounds good.
We're at 12:10. I don't want to rush it, but I also want to acknowledge the time.
I have one thing.
Sorry, Phoebe. And there you are. You're here.
I am here.
I'm gonna ignore it. So you can tell I don't know.
So this one is small, but, and I may have been looking at the wrong draft, but it says somewhere when it's talking about the first 30 and logical places, and it lists Safeco Field, which is now Lumen Field. So that's just a minor edit. Then,
Thank you.
but relevant. And then the second part of that is my understanding, and I meant to say this before, is that that's not within the first 30 is placement. If it's in the mid, that Lumen Field wouldn't be in the mid. So it's kind of, that would be like the next phase kind of commentary. Although we'd all like to see it there and we use that as a frame of reference, I don't think that's real.
And maybe this statement is overly expansive.
Mm-hmm.
The intent is really
Yes.
for that initial pilot, your recommendation, really confining it to areas that are marked by people who are tourists or visitors to our community and in those locations. Maybe
Correct.
it doesn't need to have all the expansive
Correct.
locations. It's just that statement.
Right. Well, I think the statement is really important, but because it gets specific, then the specifics may be incorrect. So you kind of are potentially negating.
Is it not now within the mid?
I'm sorry.
Is it,
I think that's a point of clarification, because if it is, then you could keep it. So that was a question. I didn't think it was in the mid.
can we clarify
Because-
that with? DSA?
Because how would the mid be touching that if Pioneer Square is in there?
A little bit
Unless it-
might, but T-Mobile might not.
So Phoebe, we just happen to have an expert in the room. John Scholes. John, could you tell us, is Lumen Field in the mid?
The boundary runs adjacent to Lumen down Occidental to Royal Rome and T-Mobile.
Is it because of the Pioneer Square Historic District, or it just happened to be drawn that way?
Mirrors the historic district boundary.
Got it. Thank you.
But
So there
not,
could be kiosks that are sited adjacent to Lumen and T-Mobile. But
Okay.
you also have the historic boundary
Right.
that or district that we've intended to avoid.
So it sounds like both the mid and the historic district run to the center line of the rights of way. They can be on the other side. And I
Okay,
think we
great.
felt
You'd probably already knew that. I just wasn't sure of that. So then just change it to Lumen, and then I think that's.
Lumen or T-Mobile, which one? Both.
About the
Both,
stadiums.
both, but not Safeco.
or how about for clarity and succinctness, stadium?
Stadiums, excellent.
So I want to try to get back to the idea of the amendments. We had Molly's amendment, we had Adam's amendment, we had the larger amendment that Ben had proposed with.
Not as minor, but.
No, other than that, well, it had more expanse
Had
and
more
quality,
expanse.
which was a good thing, and I appreciate that it was more expansive. And then finally, a amendment to make sure there's a specific statement about concerns about the implications about potentially with the sign code. Those are the only four.
And the amendment to the public art program.
And
But that
was
was included.
already.
That's sorry, in the last.
Sorry, in the last one. Got it.
And just to be clear, that amendment is in the draft report that came in on page 13, where there were the 5 elements about elevating the role of local artists and adding the honorarium. Is there any more discussion about any of those amendments or any additional amendments that you're interested in to this report? I want to take just a quick opportunity before I ask for you to acknowledge and approve the report. John, not to pick on you again, but did you have any questions or comments before the commission determined whether or not they approved the report?
No, just thankful for your very thoughtful deliberation over 4 meetings on this proposal. I think it will set up the city council for a much more robust review and consideration of this application. So thank you.
Well, and I'd like to thank you for all the work. And I think that what this commission did and what their job is to do is to develop a robust record that helps the council with the work that they need to do. And I think that what you all have done and what the design team have done have risen to the challenge and responded to questions. There are lingering questions that we're not going to answer here. But you all did your job in a really effective way, which was to pose questions, have the design team respond to the questions, and to develop a more robust record than what we started on April 4th. Any other discussion? Phoebe? I guess then the final question is, do you all approve of this report? I'll assume that it's approved unless I hear otherwise at this point.
Were you gonna send us a couple paragraphs to look at?
Yeah.
Did you need a motion or did you have one? Or I can't remember.
That's what I'm saying. I'll assume that when we had a motion and a second, motion by Molly, Adam, discussion. So I think what's on the table is whether or not you approve it. My assumption is that this is approved unless I hear otherwise. Thank you. I think we're done.
I thought you wanted to approve the minutes too.
Oh, yeah. Do we have a motion for the September 19th minutes?
Motion to approve.
Is there a second?
Second.
That would be perfect if there was no second. Is there any discussion about the minutes? Approved. Thank you, everybody. Thank you, Phoebe. Thank you, people who attended online. We will work with ESTA. We'll work with the commissioner today to finalize the draft, and then we'll forward that to ESTA with the entire record. I think we're it. That's it. Thank you.
You're gonna take a crack at that Goldilocks paragraph that explains
Too hot, too cold.
too hot, too
in the middle.
cold, just right.
Yeah.
I think I don't know.
That's what we could have said, Brian.
Brian, welcome to my world.
You say I know. That's the 11th.
Outside of the.
No, I mean,
Exactly.
It's a list.
Good job, Alan.
Part of it was your.
Some people eat up the right guy.
Oh,
You know, those two ones that the consequences of the offset is a lot.
And I'm not gonna move anything
The
forward.
price is too high.
Oh,
That's not, that's not in any circumstance. You're already the balance.
Yeah, I know.
You know how to do it. Yeah. Like, I know, because then it's. Yeah, but it's like 20 points. Oh, now, it's like, that's not, that's. Well, no, that's. If they start. I don't learn that. I know that. You know, especially last year. You know, so. Yeah, I know. That's the best. But I'm kind of curious, like, how you guys want to work with it.
Back.
Yes.
Because I just pulled up. I just saw that.
I mean, you guys don't, I haven't worked with it yet.
Yeah.
That's what I'm about.
Yeah.
He's a.
I think there's like
Yeah,
a
got my way kind of guy.
Yeah.
Questions on that?
Oh, right. Hi, where are you?
I
just got back.
I think it's more.
Sorry.
Yeah, whatever.